everybody. How you doing tonight? Wasn't it a beautiful day? Absolutely. I personally like it just a tad warmer. I'm a southern girl. I like heat and humidity. I know it's weird, I know. When it's in the 70s, I put on a sweater. So, it is the first Friday of the month. We are at the Firefly Coffee House. So you must know that this is the Oregon Area Progressives Community Open Mic, and we are so glad that you are here this evening. Our featured guest for tonight is John Nichols. He has not arrived yet, but he always shows up, rarely on time. So don't tell him I said that. That was a secret. Or no, as my daughter says, we don't keep secrets, we have surprises. That's that whole thing of don't tell, somebody tells you not to tell. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. We have music tonight by the Union Bell Band, and this is our own in-house band. And I can tell you that they are definitely in-house because they practice in my house on a regular basis. And when we asked them to be ready about a year ago for playing at the open mic, we went through so many names. We Googled them and they were all taken. And then it was like, well, gee, we live on Union Road, Union and Bellbrook. And what better thing than to ring a bell for unions and other people, working people. So they are the Union Bell Band. Amanda Peterson on ukulele. Bertie on guitar. And my husband, Rick Beshin, on guitar. Oh, and I'm Carlene Beshin. One thing that Amanda asked me to mention is that we are being taped tonight for local cable. So if you're sitting near the camera, don't swear. Okay? Also, if you have anything that you'd like to say from the mic, raise your hand and Nancy will bring you a slip. All the rules for that are on the slip. Try to keep it to 3 minutes, clean language, all that. Okay, so without further ado, I did see John Nichols walk in, so he is here, but we're going to start out with music by the Union Bell Band.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to play a song that's basically our warm-up. This gets our fingers going, and then Marilyn has an announcement, has to leave early, so we'll play one song, and then Marilyn can speak for a little bit, and then we'll play another tune before John comes up. One, two. We like to play fairly obscure Bob Dylan songs, and this is our favorite for warming up because it's got a lot of repetitive chords. Gets the fingers going. Okay, here we go. 2 times on the intro. I'm sailing away, my old true love. I'm sailing away in the morning. Is there something I can send you from across the sea, from the place that I'll be landing? No, there's nothing you can send me, my own true love. There's nothing I'm wishing to be owning. Carry yourself back to me unspoiled across that lonesome ocean. Oh, but I just thought you might want something fine, made of silver, of golden, either from the mountains of Madrid or the coast of Bali. vast ocean. I'd force it all for your sweet kiss. It's all I'm wishing to be open. But I might be gone a long time, and it's only that I'm asking. Is there something I can send you to remember me by, to make your time more easy passing? Oh, how can you ask me again? It only brings me sorrow, the same thing I would want today, I would want again tomorrow. Oh, I got a lonesome day. I was just from her ship, a sailing, saying I'm coming back again. It depends on how I'm feeling. If you must think that way, I'm sure your mind is rolling. I'm sure your thoughts are not with me, but with the country where you're going. So take heed of the western winds. Take heed of the stormy weather. And yes, there is something you can send back to me. Spanish boots of Spanish leather. Spanish boots of Spanish leather. Anybody know that one? Never heard it before? If you go to YouTube and look up Bob Dylan songs, there's like 1,100 to choose from. So Marilyn, you want to say a few words?
Hi, I'm Marilyn McDowell. I'm Marilyn McDowell from Oregon, and I am here tonight. I am here tonight to represent Citizen Action Network, of which I'm a member, and and I'm committed, all right, to helping Wisconsin mend the rural urban divide. The Citizen Action Network is led by Dr. Robert Craig of Milwaukee. He's been active in building co-op opportunities in several regions of the state. There are 2 in the Milwaukee area, 1 in the Fox Valley area, 1 in the Wausau area, and 1 in Eau Claire area. Citizen Action is now organizing in the Dane County and Driftless area. The purpose? To help heal urban-rural divide by working on projects that affect us all. A first initiative is to increase green jobs in the area and to assist homeowners throughout the area. How? Well, the USDA has a grant opportunity available to electric and gas utilities throughout rural areas and municipalities with fewer than 20,000 people. This grant is part of the Rural Electric Sustainable Program. It's a 20-year grant that allows ratepayers access to free upgrades for water heaters, windows, insulation, and other energy-saving devices that will be obtained through the participating utilities. We need to push utilities to participate in this program. That's the way it takes off. Currently, only the Columbia-Adams County Rural Electric Co-op is participating. I'm passing out tonight, actually Nancy will be passing out, dual-purpose cards that are both a petition to your electric/gas utility and a request for information and volunteer help. Please complete the entire card. We've had several test the water meetings, and the campaign launch meeting is August 15th, 6:30 to 8 at night in the community room of the Oregon Village Hall. More information will be forthcoming, so please complete the contact info on the cards so you can be on the list to receive the info. This is a super opportunity to help people in this area, to support climate healthy devices, and save money also. It's win-win. We're going green without spending the green. At this time, I'd like to have a show of hands of people who would be interested in receiving more information and petitioning their electric and gas utility to participate in this grant program. Please, may I have a show of hands? Nancy will give you cards. Thank you.
Yeah, show your hands, please.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, I'm already a member. Oh yeah, this is great. Just keep your hands up so I can find you.
Oh, we got one.
Okay. Thanks. All right, you too. Thanks. Picture for each of you. Thanks.
I'll be picking up cards at the back center table when they're completed. I need to leave a little early, so if you either hand them to Nancy or set them on the table back there, I'll grab them. Thanks again.
Thank you, Marilyn. All right, we're going to play a song here that I know we have actually performed this at the open mic before, but anytime between now and January 20th of 2020, if we have an opportunity to play the open mic, we're going to sing this song. This is a song that Willie Nelson made famous, written by David Lynn Jones back in 1983. And David Lynn Jones is forever grateful because it put his kids through college. You're tired and weak, and we will make them strong. Bring us your foreign songs, and we will sing along. Leave us your broken dreams, we'll give them time to mend. There's still a lot of love living in the promised land. Living in the promised land. Our dreams are made of steel. The prayer of every man is to know how freedom feels. There is a winding road across the shifting sand, and room for everyone living in the promised land. So we came from a distant isle, nameless woman, faithless child, like a bad dream. Till there was no room at all, no place to run, no place to fall. Give us your daily bread, we have no shoes to wear, no place to call our own, only this cross to bear. We are the multitude, lend us a helping hand. Is there no love anymore, living in the promised land, living in the promised land? Our dreams are made of steel, the prayer of every man is to know how freedom feels. There is a winding road across the shifting sand, and room for everyone living in the promised land, and room for everyone living in the promised land. No, it's not. And I think just momentarily we should.
So as wonderful as the Union Bell Band is, you didn't know they were playing tonight, so that tells me you really didn't come here to hear them. But I think they do deserve another round of applause. Just because. And they'll be back to play again later. Remember, if you have something you'd like to say from the mic, you need to get a slip, and it needs to get to me so that I can introduce you after the portion with John. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to John Nichols, National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation magazine, Associate Editor at the Capital Times, and all-around rebel-rousing troublemaker. So, John.
This mic. Lots of don't worry, it's fine. All right, well, what a pleasure to be here. And what a good crowd. Has everybody found a seat back there? Is that good?
There's two up here.
Yeah, there's a couple more if you're so inclined, but you do not have to. I know that as a good Wisconsinite, I never sit in front. Where are you people from? Teasing. But they're from Stoughton, which is completely... It's understood, though, because, you know, people, they have to try harder. But as a good Wisconsinite, I know that you always sit in the back so that you can sneak out. And I totally respect that, but we'll try and make this entertaining enough tonight and relatively functional enough so that you won't have to sneak out. And if you do, Charlie Uphoff will make a note of it. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Uphoff, one of the great organizers. I'll let you in on a secret. I wrote a book about socialism in America. And it is, I've written a lot of books. It remains by far the bestseller of any of them that I wrote. And in fact, it was featured last Sunday in the Washington Post, and then yesterday in the Los Angeles Review of Books, which is not bad because I wrote it almost 10 years ago. So it has a lingering reality, and I just want people to know that Charlie Uphoff is in it. And the reason Charlie Uphoff is in it, there's two reasons Charlie Uphoff is in it. Number one, his father was one of the greatest socialist leaders in the United States. They loved him. Now, his dad was a beloved figure. Norman Thomas and everybody would come out to the farm south of Madison. And so the reality is that on the very streets where you walk, some of the most dangerous people in history have passed. Charlie's dad was frequently the Socialist Party nominee for governor or U.S. senator in Wisconsin. And each time he ran, he would make up a song. And do you remember that, Charlie? He would have little songs about his campaign, which were amusing and witty. And very useful because his grandchildren have all become incredibly successful in the entertainment industry. But Charlie's dad would do these songs in debates with other candidates. And remarkably enough, in 1944, when Joe McCarthy made his first run for the United States Senate in Wisconsin, and Joe McCarthy was a horrible, drunken crook, right? Which, you know, many people say is a sort of a predecessor for the current Republican Party. But Joe McCarthy at that time was like on leave from the military, making up stories about all the things he had supposedly had done. So he's in this debate, or in this session, with Charlie Uphoff's dad, the socialist candidate. And this is the one thing we know, the only good thing that ever happened regarding Joe McCarthy is that at some point he had to listen to Charlie Uphoff's dad sing a song about socialism. And I am sure that's why we had the Red Scare. The other reason Charlie is in my book is because Charlie was elected to office after office, school board and village gigs, and all these things down here, and at a time when this was a somewhat more conservative area. And I asked him one time, why are they electing a guy who acknowledges that he's a democratic socialist? And Charlie said, well, they're a little grudging about it initially, but then they say, well, if you're a socialist, you must like government, so you'll probably pay attention to the job. And so I just want you to know that long before Bernie Sanders, long before Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the most successful electoral democratic socialists in the United States was your own Charlie Uphoff. Yeah! And I would also give credit to his late wife, who was a brilliant, brilliant organizer as well. And in fact, I think you met because of your socialist ties.
Gene McCarthy.
Gene McCarthy as well. All right, so on that note, let's talk about politics. And I'm honored to be with you. I'm totally honored that there's such a big crowd out today. This is fabulous. There must be, what is going on? What's up? Oh, right. Donald Trump is about to be defeated for re-election as president of the United States. I understand people are already getting ready for the party. And that's fabulous. I'll just warn you about one thing. I was in New York on the night when he was sort of elected back in 2016, and there were a lot of people who were ready for a party that night as well. And so, while I do genuinely believe that Donald Trump will be defeated in 2020, he already lost in 2016 by almost 3 million votes. But while I genuinely believe that he will be defeated, I also believe that it's incredibly important for Democrats and progressives, not always the same thing, but for Democrats and progressives, to recognize the struggle that they are going into. And the simple fact of the matter is that this race will be the ugliest and most untenable race for the presidency of the United States since 1860. It will be the worst since the race in which Abraham Lincoln ran against those who did not want to address the original sin of the American experiment, that being human bondage. And I don't say this casually. I've covered a lot of politics for a very long time. And I have covered a lot of ugly races, horrible races, in which really bad people ran really ugly campaigns. I'm old enough to actually remember when Richard Nixon was the President of the United States. That was not a good person. I'm old enough to remember when Ronald Reagan was the President of the United States, and I am very surprised that people only recently are like, whoa, did you hear that Reagan was a racist? And I was like, really? There were people that didn't know that? I mean, this is the guy who vetoed guy who vetoed sanctions against South Africa. I mean, who doesn't want to get Nelson Mandela out of jail? I mean, Ronald Reagan was a bad man. He was a very bad man.
He announced in
Philadelphia, Mississippi. I know. And it's like there's people now who are like, this is stunning. We heard a tape and Reagan sounded kind of racist. Where did that come from? You know, I'm sorry. Maybe he picked it up in Philadelphia, Mississippi on his way to vetoing sanctions against South Africa. This is a bad, bad man. And, you know, jovial and congenial, I understand. But see, that was the interesting thing about it. At least they used to lie about it, right? Nixon would always, you know, before he kicked a dog or something like that, he would pet the dog for the cameras, right? And Reagan, you know, Reagan would always, oh, you know, and stuff like that. And he would always try to be congenial. Donald Trump makes no effort whatsoever to cloak what he is about and what he is trying to do. And this is the most important thing to understand. Donald Trump knows that he is a ruined human being. He knows full well that he got no success on his own, that he was given money by his father and taught how to game the system. He knows that he was never a billionaire. He knows that he was a second-rate reality TV star who bumbled his way into the presidency of the United States because the Republican Party had become such a false construct, such a lie, that a second-rate reality TV star could get up on stage against 16 of its best and brightest, I use quote marks, candidates for the presidency of the United States and point to them and say, these are all hucksters and crooks. And looking at Donald Trump, the grassroots of the Republican Party said, you know, you're right, they are. And he beat, you know, I mean, how can you imagine this? He beat Scott Walker. Scott Walker, do you realize right now that Marianne Williamson has been in the presidential race longer than Scott Walker was in 2015? I mean, Scott Walker was, but he was, you know, this guy, they thought he was the greatest thing in the world. Jeb Bush, you know, it's like the, you know, because we're a monarchy, and so he was the son of a former king, brother of another king, and, you know, I mean, all these guys, Trump just whipped them all, and he had the Republican nomination for President of the United States. And then all of these pundits ran around, they said, well, he can never get elected because Republican women won't vote for him. Right? Because they'll see through, they just won't vote for him. Excuse me, these are people that voted for Reagan and Nixon, right? They're used to this stuff. The only difference with Trump is that Trump actually says it. And the problem is that because Trump does know full well who he is and what he is, he wants to run for re-election as President of the United States by dividing the United States as it has never been divided in our lifetime. His goal is to divide us against one another in the cruelest and most destructive ways. That is the plan for his re-election. It is not a secret. I mean, you literally have to not be paying attention. You literally have to be walking around with your hands over your ears, you know, your eyes shut, to not see what he is doing. When he attacked Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley, 4 young women who were elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in multiracial, multi-ethnic districts across this country in 2018 as what can only be seen as a massive grassroots uprising against not just Donald Trump, but against the compromises of the Democratic Party that let Donald Trump become president. When he attacked them his goal was to make people put race first and foremost. Because what do Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have in common?
You're smart.
Yes! They're also, I've interviewed every one of them and they're all kind of short. No, what they have in common is that they are people of color. And we have women of color now in positions of authority that they were denied throughout the history of this country. And Donald Trump believes that he can exploit old bigotries and old racisms to try and divide us in the 21st century. And it is why he attacked Elijah Cummings last week. It is why he attacked the city of Baltimore. Donald Trump plans to run for re-election as President of the United States as an out-and-out racist. And he is betting that the people of the United States will buy into that racism. And it is the job of the Democrats and progressives to call it out and run a campaign as courageous as the campaigns that beat racism in the past. Anyone who tells you not to talk about this issue, anyone who tells you, well, let's go quiet on it, let's go soft on this, anyone who tells you that is probably a never-Trump Republican who was so stupid and so crooked that they let their party get taken over by Donald Trump, and now they want us to accept their stupidness and their crookedness as a vision for the politics going forward. Do not fall for it. A simplistic, dumbed-down campaign against Donald Trump will get you a simplistic, dumbed-down result. The goal in this campaign is to run deeper and smarter and more honest, because here's something I know about covering politics. I've covered politics in every state in this country, in 25 countries around the world. I have covered stone-cold racists when they ran for office in this country. I covered both of David Duke's major campaigns in Louisiana. In the first campaign that David Duke ran in 1990 for the U.S. Senate, the Democrats were all like, well, let's not engage with this. Let's kind of go soft on this thing. You know, we'll kind of talk around it. We'll say some nice things about education and health care and all sorts of stuff. And people will vote with us. They'll see through it, right? David Duke almost won that Senate seat. He got well into the mid-40s. He had a very, very successful campaign for the former head of the Ku Klux Klan. The next year, he ran against Edwin Edwards, who was the playboy, kind of wild former governor of Louisiana. Edwin Edwards was always in trouble. Edwin Edwards was always controversial. But Edwin Edwards also said, vote for Edwin Edwards. It's important. And he was not cautious about, going to the heart of the matter. He had a reputation as a playboy, controversial as such. And so he said, I got one thing in common with David Duke. We're both wizards under the sheets. He didn't fool around with making these assertions. And then when you got to the heart of the matter, he campaigned in African-American churches, in African-American neighborhoods, and he called Duke a racist, and the people who campaigned for him called Duke a racist. And the fact of the matter is, if the issue is made clear, people actually don't want to vote for racist. But if you dance around it, you end up getting beat. And so, here's my core message for you today as we start this conversation. Nothing about 2020 can be cautious or compromised. Nothing about 2020 should be centrist or moderate. Doesn't mean you can't have moderate positions. That's fine, and that's not my point. But if they run this campaign kind of like up the middle cautious, Donald Trump will be popping champagne corks like you've never seen before. That's what he wants. What he needs to get is a challenge not just based on issues, which matter immensely, but also based on morality and on our basic human values as Americans. And I don't care who you nominate for president, that's your job, but I will tell you this. If you don't nominate somebody who can speak to the heart and soul of America based on morals and values and ideals, and can cut through all the other stuff, if you don't nominate somebody who can do that, then you are failing the American people. You're failing this moment, because this is not a moment for running something careful or cautious or compromised. This is a moment for beating Donald Trump, and not beating him by a little, beating him by a lot. Because the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump does not need to go alone. Donald Trump needs to be ushered out of Washington with every member of the party of Lincoln who compromised the basic values of that party in order to make it into the party of Trumpism. I wish that the Congress would impeach Donald Trump, and I wish that the Senate would vote on it, because I want a list of every Republican that votes to keep him in office. Yeah. I want that list for 2020. And I hear people say to me, oh, well, if you impeach Donald Trump, that'll energize his base. Did you see that rally the other night? No. They're plenty energized. Some 29-year-old guy jumped out of a car and tried to beat up a 61-year-old man who was protesting against Trump. The fact of the matter is his base is plenty energized. Impeachment isn't going to do anything to slow that down. The fact of the matter is we may not get to impeachment. And I'm not here to preach impeachment. But I'm going to tell you this. Boy, would I like to have that list of Republicans in the Senate. I would like to have their names. And if Ron Johnson from Wisconsin votes to keep that racist in the White House, I want to know that, because the Republican Party was founded in Wisconsin by people who opposed racism, and I want to identify Ron Johnson as a sin against the Republican Party itself. I hope I've made myself clear. Now, I just went to a couple of debates in Detroit. And I gotta tell you, I'm gonna give you my analysis, and you are totally free to disagree. Because I don't come here to tell you that I'm right. I was right about everything I just said. But at this point, I could be wrong about some of this, and I'm fair with that. Here's my analysis of the debates that I saw in Detroit. What the hell is wrong with Jake Tapper? I mean, I like the guy generally, and he retweets me now and again, and I think, and you know, I've been around him a lot. But what the hell was he doing with those questions in the first debate? Aren't you afraid people will lose their private insurance? Excuse me? When did private insurance become popular? I'm not kidding. I mean, it's just an amazing thing. What kind of other reality do you have to be in to think, yeah, people are really loving these deductibles? No, I mean, there's nothing I like more than a premium increase, except when I call to get care for all the insurance money I paid in and they tell me that's not covered. I mean, the notion that private insurance companies are some sort of like beloved institution in America, 2 years ago the Bloomberg polling group polled on this, and they gave you a list of American institutions. You got to rank them, right? And, at the top were, like everybody loves the post office. It's beloved, as you should love the post office. They try to kill it, of course, because that's why we can't have nice things, right? Yeah. But so the post office is up there, and everything, teachers, people love teachers, and public education. You know, a lot of people even like journalism. But as you got down into the pit, right? You know, as you got down like the lower rungs, you know, like kind of like after you've gotten rid of, you know, like the parking lot at the end of the road car dealership, you know, right? The one where they don't actually have a building, just some car. A guy sits in a car waiting for you to come. After you get past that, and you know, after you get past people who like are selling like, you know, milk that's past its buy on date or its sell by date. After you get past that, right, then you get Wall Street. And people really don't like Wall Street. It's very, very low on the ratings. So it's way down. When Bloomberg polled, it was way, way down. And then after Wall Street, of course, you know, remember this is when, you know, Mitch McConnell was running the Senate and Paul Ryan was still running the House, came Congress, right? So it's, you're getting down, you know, like mall, bad car dealers, sell-by milk sellers, Wall Street, Congress, and then after all of that, insurance companies. No, it was really low. The only thing that was below insurance companies, and this is sort of amusing in context, Big Pharma. Big Pharma! It was at the bottom of the list! Yes! So, I mean, the people that they're literally sitting in these debates, they're literally sitting there asking questions like, won't people hate losing the incredibly great deal they're getting on their drugs now? And I don't want moderators in debates. I do not want moderators in debates to be cheerleaders. I don't want them to give easy questions. I don't want them to, you know, say, wow, you're so great, you know, carry on. I want them to be tough and incisive, but I also want them to be accurate and informative. And so the question isn't, won't people hate losing their private insurance? It's explain to us why people fear changes in healthcare because it's such a horrible mess right now that they're afraid any change might make it worse. That's a fair question. That's a very legitimate question, and people can answer it. And you can say some people will cling to their private insurance because they're afraid that what something else might be worse. I understand that, and that's good to discuss. But don't foster this fantasy, right? And don't call on John Delaney to then, like, you know, peddle the fantasy a little more, right? And so that, yeah, this guy's up here, I love this guy. This is my amen corner up here. He's going, yeah, that guy's a piece of work. And you're right, he is. But, so I was very disappointed in the tenor of questions. And I was very disappointed in some of the Democratic candidates for president, like Delaney and Bennett and Hickenlooper. Well, all of them, by the way, will never be president of the United States of America. But I was disappointed in you know, their gaming of it, and it would have, you know, kind of would have been a difficult, unpleasant night, except that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders were there. Yeah. And that first debate was a journey to the heavens. It was fantastic because Elizabeth Warren, first off, she goes to these other candidates that are peddling stuff. She said, that's just Republican talking points. And then, not to be outdone, Bernie Sanders says, okay, you're picking on the other candidates, I'm going straight to the moderators. Jake Tapper, your question was Republican talking points. And you're like there, and you're thinking, wow, this is the debate I have wanted to have my whole life. Right? And then, like John Delaney says, something else that's stupid. Or immoral or wrong. And then Elizabeth Warren literally delivers the best line of a 21st century debate. Maybe the best line going back to Nixon Kennedy. Maybe the best line going back to Lincoln Douglas. She says, why do you go to all the trouble of running for president of the United States and doing this whole campaign so that you can tell people you can't do anything? Like a very hot knife through butter. It was a wonderful moment, and here's my report to you. The first debate was won by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They won the debate. Doesn't mean you have to back them. That's not my point, but they won that debate. But you know what was even more interesting? Because they got to explain it, Medicare for All won the first debate. Because for the first time, instead of all the negative ads and all the attacks and all the criticisms of it, the plan that Franklin Roosevelt started developing with John Dingell's dad in 1943, the plan that Harry Truman proposed in 1948, the plan that responsible people have been trying to get in place in this country for 75 years, was finally explained on national television by people who actually believe in it and want to advance it. And it was a very, very significant moment in our politics. And you know what the fact of the matter is? If people always say, oh, I don't know if Elizabeth Warren could stand up to Donald Trump. Right? You know what? I don't want her to stand up to Donald Trump. I want her to look right into that camera and say, this man is lying to you. Let me tell you what we're talking about. Because people don't need to have an engagement with Donald Trump. They need to have an engagement with the ideas that come after Donald Trump. You need to explain to them where you want to go and why it's better than where we are. And what they did in that debate was fantastic. Now the next night was a little bit, this guy, I love this man right here. He's literally sitting up here, and just like he's gone, Delaney, what a piece of work. I said the next night, he goes, oh, terrible. Terrible. And you know what? It was kind of terrible. It was kind of terrible. And it wasn't, this is not to pick on individual candidates. That's not the point. Although I have to say about Joe Biden, you know, one of the points of being really experienced is that you're supposed to be really good at it, too. You know, I mean, experience is great, but you want to be really good at it, because experience at not being great at it is sort of a problematic thing. Now, Biden, I thought, did okay in the debate. He did. I thought he did. And I have always had a certain affection for him. I love when he's telling stories about his working class background. Really do. But Biden did okay in the debate because no one was paying attention to him after a certain point, because they were all listening to Tulsi Gabbard pick on Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris go back at her, and then Jay Inslee attacked Biden, and then Booker got mad at somebody else. And, you know, there were literally, at one point, I'm not making this up, at one point, they had sort of a nasty face-off between Bill de Blasio and Michael Bennet. When you tune into a debate and you have to listen to Bill de Blasio and Michael Bennet get mad at each other, right, that is the point at which you check out other programming. And so it was not a great debate. It was actually a really problematic debate, and it wasn't because people had criticisms of Barack Obama. There was people in some criticism of Barack Obama. Do you know who criticizes Barack Obama? Barack Obama. Barack Obama is the first person to tell you that he didn't get to achieve things in his presidency that he would have wanted to do. So that wasn't the problem that people were, you know, saying, oh, I would have done it different. I mean, the problem was that there was no focus. There was no there in that second debate. And that's not healthy in politics. And so, at the end of the day, I will tell you, do you know who won the second debate?
First debate, Sanders.
Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders won the second debate. And they did. And you know why they won the second debate? It isn't just me saying it. Literally, in that second debate, about midway through, as it was getting so convoluted that poor Kirsten Gillibrand was asked a question and she had no idea what they were debating. And she's a really smart person. It wasn't her fault. It was that they had gotten so in the weeds. The reason they won the debate was that almost every candidate on the second night brought up what Sanders and Warren had said on the first night. And finally, Jake Tapper, trying to make it interesting and focused, literally read the transcription from Elizabeth Warren in the first debate to Joe Biden and said, well, what do you say about that? And weirdly enough, of course, Joe Biden avoided the question and answered something else. And so, I'm not here, this is not to pick on individual candidates, but it is to say that at the end of the day, you've got to have people who are focused enough to own the stage for a night, to actually dominate the discourse and shape it and move it in a certain direction. And there are many of these candidates who might be able to do that. But what we saw in Detroit, was a very kind of clear example of who can own a night, who can dominate a night. And the fact is, I know some people would like to say, oh, it was just Bernie Sanders. And other people would like to say, oh, it was just Elizabeth Warren. It wasn't. It wasn't. Those moderators and the other candidates could have taken one of those two apart. What happened on Tuesday night was that two candidates for President of the United States decided to do something that candidates don't usually do. And that is, instead of worrying only about themselves and only about scoring points, they decided that together they would advance a set of ideas that were strong enough to dominate the whole discourse on that night. And at the risk of explaining what politics is about, that is what it's about. You need to put together a ticket. Two candidates, a candidate for president and vice president, who are then able, in a November election, to dominate the discourse and move it in a functional way. Move it in the way you want it to be. I am not saying that Sanders and Warren or Warren and Sanders ought to be the ticket. That is not what I've come to tell you. But what I have come to tell you is that the ticket has to be as strong as they were that night. And so, as you move forward, this is the challenge. This is the mark that you have to put forward. It is not about individuals. It's too easy. It's too easy to get wrapped up in personalities. This is a long campaign. There's a lot going forward on it. But it is about ways in which you do politics. And the fact of the matter is that if you want to beat Donald Trump in 2020, you've got to have candidates who can do what Warren and Sanders did on that Tuesday night. It can't be any other way. Don't lie to yourself. It doesn't have to be them, but it does have to be candidates that can do that. And I'll close off with just this one notion. We'll take questions and certainly challenge my view. I'm thrilled with that. But let me close off with one notion. I've said a lot of good things about Sanders and Warren. I will also tell you that in watching these two debates, do you know who was stunning and really, 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 really good, incredibly capable on his feet? Julian Castro. Julian Castro, who is not a first-tier candidate, every time he was called on, knocked it out of the park. Kirsten Gillibrand, who some people don't like because she's mean to Al Franken, but Kirsten Gillibrand, every time she was called on, she owned the moment. It was very, very effective. They just didn't call on it very often. And you know who was stunning? Jay Inslee. Jay Inslee, you know, from out in Washington, I will tell you something. When he and Biden were going at it about climate change, I really invite you to go back and watch that moment. It was a stunning moment because Biden was saying, oh, I'm for fixing up climate change. And Inslee said, no, you're not. You're not where you need to be. And he says, this isn't about ideology, or this isn't about science. We've got 12 years to do this. Your plan doesn't do it. We've got 20 years to do this. Your plan doesn't do it. He went item by item through it, and it was a stunningly effective critique. The reason I bring that up is not to pick on Biden. The reason I bring that up is to say, if you did that to Donald Trump, That would be very effective. And so I want to emphasize that when I watched these debates, I saw a number of people showing skills that you would want to see in 2020. And you folks get to choose. You get to pick who you want to have as your candidate, right? And they have a lot to prove going forward. You got plenty of time. You don't have to settle things yet. But what I will say is, look at these candidates, not just for what they promise you, but look at how they do it. Look at their skills. Because the fact of the matter is, those skills are going to matter as you go up against the most dangerous president in American history. And if Donald Trump is reelected in 2020, no, you don't like the idea. If Donald Trump is elected in 2020, we remember the song from Bruce Cockburn. This line years ago. The trouble with normal is it always gets worse. If Donald Trump is reelected, his second term will be so much worse than his first. And he will have been validated by the American people in what he did. No more excuses, oh, they didn't know what he was up to. And this country will be fundamentally changed and damaged. Fundamentally changed and damaged. And so, when you look at who you're going to pick for a nominee, don't just think about what you like or what you want. Think about who is capable of stopping this man. Because stopping this man is the essential mission of every responsible human being in this country. We are a country that has elections for a reason. We deal with our problems democratically. Justin Amash, the very conservative congressman from Michigan, who left the Republican Party because of Donald Trump, had a tweet just today. And he's very good at his tweets. And Justin Amash essentially said, you know, look at what's become of this country. Look at where we're at. That's what's at stake. Because if we keep going in this direction, if we keep doing what we're doing, we can wreck this thing. And it's your job to make sure we don't. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So appreciate your commentary and assessment. So I'm just going to let you know what's going to happen now. Nancy, I'm going to give Nancy this cordless mic, and she's going to come around, and there's already a hand right here and there and here. So 1, 2, 3. Gwen, Linda, and I can't remember your name. Okay, so she's going to come around. I'm going to try my best to get you in the order, but I'm going to ask the first question.
Oh, there you go. All right. Moderator's prerogative.
Yeah.
So my question is, how do we get whoever the candidate is to hire you as their consultant?
One of the reasons why you like me is because I can actually say what consultants don't say to candidates, right? Because they're being paid. I cover politics for a living. I always have my views on my sleeve. I'm very open about what I believe. I also am very open to say that there's times I may be wrong, and I'm willing to take the hits on that.
Not in my experience.
There you go.
No way.
But what I really want to emphasize is that it is, at this point, it's beyond consultants. Now, I think consultants can be very useful, and they can give you advice on what TV station to buy, what ad on. But at this point, you need a candidate for President of the United States who, if all the consultants got lost on the way to the debate, could still manage it on their own. And the fact of the matter is, that means you need someone with the experience, not merely, having been around for a long time, but the experience of fighting difficult battles over long periods of time, who knows the policy top to bottom. And so, yeah, I want good consultants, but I also want good candidates. And the number one thing about a good candidate, simplest, I was in Detroit, I actually asked people, how do you win Detroit? Because Detroit had a depressed turnout in 2016. They had they had almost, I hope I get the number right, but I think it's almost 100,000 fewer people voted in 2016 than in 2012. Dramatic drop in turnout. And Michigan was lost by 11,000 votes. And so Detroit was, you needed a bigger turnout there. If you could get that, it doesn't matter about somebody out in some suburb or somebody out in some rural area who voted however they voted. What matters is that you have, in a city that votes about 95% Democratic, you had 100,000 fewer voters. So how do you get them excited? And you know what people said to me, one after another, every single person I talked to? Show up. Come here. And in 2016, the Democratic nominee for President of the United States did not come to Wisconsin. That is wrong. You do not go to the states that you might win and neglect the states that you are supposed to win. So you start to build your candidacy. This is my consulting. You start to build your candidacy where the people who are going to support you live. And that means you go to Detroit and you go to Milwaukee. And in this state, you also go to Eau Claire and La Crosse. And if you work yourself to the bone and you are incredibly tired, I will tell you something. On the day after an election, you can sleep in. But do not sleep in on the day before the election. Come to Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania.
Hi, my name is Gwen Faber-Maidson, and I'm from the town of Oregon.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for coming and speaking with all of us tonight. I personally am super energized. I was sort of down on the dumps, and now I feel a lot better. Thank you. However, I do have a question for you, and I need advice. And this is, it represents, I have friends that have voted for Trump. And
Got a brother-in-law.
yeah, and it's like, how do you even, we avoid the subject like it's, well, it is toxic, but how do we speak to people to guide them away from his ways and the racism? And unfortunately, there's also one thing that you did not speak about tonight was the evangelical issue and, you know, single voter issues. And that's very difficult to deal with. But give us some ideas on how to speak to some of our dear friends who don't have a clue.
Yeah. Well, they may have a clue, but it's the wrong clue. And so here's the thing that's really important when you talk to people that you love and that you care about. Don't be cruel to them, right? That's not gonna. That isn't. Don't break the relationship. That's not gonna help in any way. And in fact, if you break the relationship, there's a chance that other people around them will see you as the bad person. So you keep that conversation going. It is difficult. Charlie Uphoff, one of the nicest people I have ever known. Literally one of the most decent people I have ever known, has been a left-wing, sometimes, you know, within the Democratic Party, but barely, extremist, living out in, you know, relatively rural areas with all sorts of people, and occasionally getting himself elected to the school board or the village president.
City council.
City council. And so the fact of the matter is that keep it on that humane level, as Charlie's very good at, works. And so you have to do it even if you despise, you know, some of where they're coming from. That's number one. It's really important. And you know what the other reason for that is? Because unfortunately, we're Wisconsinites. And we have to be nice to people, to their face. No, I'm very serious about this. You know, how many times have you walked through a crowd as a Wisconsinite, and if somebody bumps into you, you apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, right? Yeah, literally, somebody trips you, you fall on your face and break your finger. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, we are apologetic. And it's a wonderful thing about us. We defer to niceness wherever we can. So, I put that up front because it's important. Now, how do we start to talk to these people? You've got to do, and I'm on a multi-year mission with my brother-in-law. And with all due respect, despite the fact that Charlie Sykes is now on MSNBC, as, you know, posing as somebody progressive, my brother-in-law was ruined by Charlie Sykes because he had the radio on in the barn, right? And it's all this diatribe after diatribe after diatribe. And so when I talk to my brother-in-law, who I love very much and who's a really, really good man, he's a farmer. So I talk all the time about farm issues. And I think that's the heart of the matter. Talk to them about where they're at. And frankly, if you really want to move them, become knowledgeable about what Trump is doing as regards where they are at. And you know what? I got to tell you, talking to a dairy farmer right now about Donald Trump is a lot easier than you might think, right? There is some real space there. And I hate the fact that the Democratic Party does such a lousy job on rural issues. It has to do better, and frankly, it has to help you out in those conversations. But that's it. Get to know where they're at, and talk to them about the issues they care about. Not in a hectoring way, but kind of trying to keep giving them information, keeping that conversation. And if it comes up to the ugly stuff, the racism and the xenophobia, I always think questions are really good. Yeah. Didn't our great-great-grandfather fight in the Civil War against racism? Weren't we immigrants? Didn't our family come at a time when didn't they come with nothing? Aren't we proud of our great-grandma who arrived at 16 from Poland with only, a trunk and got sent out to rural Wisconsin and worked in a railroad hotel, met an Irishman who got killed after she had 6 kids, and then the oldest of them 10 years old, and then for the rest of her life had to take in laundry in Lone Rock, Wisconsin, still struggling with learning the English language, but working hard and raising up those 6 kids, and then one of those kids being the father of my mom. I can talk to anybody about these issues, and it makes me feel good because I'm proud of my immigrant ancestry, and I'm proud of what they did. And the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of evangelicals who look at the conditions of those children at the border and say that something about this doesn't really jive with the biblical injunction to welcome the stranger. And so, you know what I mean? This is it. Yeah. This is it. And so what I would suggest is at this core level, be nice to them. Learn about what concerns them and talk about that. But then, if you get to the fundamental issues, the heart and soul issues, remind them of who they are. Because I don't think we do that enough. I don't think we remind people enough that here in this state, if you're a multi-generational Wisconsinite, there is a really good chance that someone in your family died fighting against slavery. Somebody in your family was wounded down south because they thought that human bondage was a sin. And the fact is, when you have a president of the United States who can't tell the difference between somebody who's waving the Confederate flag and somebody who says it's wrong to wave the Confederate flag in Charlottesville, I'm glad to have that discussion. I hope you won't be as passionate as I just was.
We have family that had a house that was part of the Underground Railroad.
There you go. There you go. She had a family there. They had a house in the Underground Railroad. I think I would use that as a starting off point for the family discussion. Thank you.
Here's the next question. Linda Kessel from Madison. You said something about a battle of morality, taking that into 2020 against Trump. My question has to do with all of the moral battles in 2016, like grabbing by the and all of the affairs that were pointed out and the attacks on Mexico. That was all moral battles. What happened? And how will this be different?
Very good questions. I'm going to separate your moral battles, if I can. By the way, this woman, I don't know how many of you know Linda, she's come on a tour down south from Madison. But this is the woman who again and again and again has organized rallies at the Capitol to challenge the president on issues of immigration and refugees and Every time this president does the wrong thing, Linda calls and says, let's have a rally at the Capitol, let's stand up and make our differences known. She is a remarkable organizer. And when this is all done, we're going to have an honor roll. And Linda Kissel, her name's going to be right at the top.
A little bit up at the mic.
Do it in the mic. She is a really wonderful soul. So, here we go on this question of morality. I hate to tell you that pointing out that Donald Trump has affairs, and pointing out that he's on, I don't know which wife, and pointing out that he's a hypocrite, and a cynic, and a racist, and a xenophobe, and a cruel man who really, did you see last night's rally? Did you see what he did at last night's rally?
Yeah.
I can't imitate it. I cannot imitate it in front of you. Because it was too, I'm not kidding. It was a gesture that was not a good gesture. It was, trust me, you have never, you're a young woman, so you don't know, but you have never seen a president of the United States do what he did last night. And he'll do something else tomorrow night. And so, this isn't about Donald Trump's personal morality or lack thereof. We can't win that fight. And I'll tell you why, as regards our evangelical friends. And as a believer, I'm in the camp, right? I'm in the camp. I read my Bible. I happen to be a Quaker. And so one of the things that you are taught up front is that everybody sins. That everybody is imperfect, right? And Trump has played that card to the extreme. He has basically said, everyone is a sinner, and so my sins just happen to be out front. But boy, I'm going to give you what you want in court nominees and things like that. So we don't win that fight. We're not going to claw them back. Now, this is what I mean about separating our moralities, however. Because the fact of the matter is, one of the biggest mistakes that, in my view, was made in 2016 was not to much more aggressively defend immigrants and refugees. The Democratic Party is going to be identified as the party of immigrants and refugees. It is. And whether you like it or not, that's going to happen. And so, instead of kind of running away and this notion that you're going to talk about something else, talk about that. Talk about it in effective ways. Talk about the fact that this is a nation of immigrants. Do you know how effective an issue it can be? When John Kennedy ran for president in 1960, several years earlier he had written the book Profiles in Courage. In 1960, he had a book that he wrote for the campaign, America, Nation of Immigrants. And it was, John Kennedy ran for president on a book about immigration and how great it was and how much it had contributed to this country. And so what I would say about, when we talk about this is lean in. Embrace the things that, if he's attacking something, make it your strength. Don't see it as a weakness. And I say this especially with the word socialism. And that's just reality. That's just reality. Pete Buttigieg, who's actually a pretty good candidate, pretty capable young man, right? Pete, in the debate the other night, he had a great line. He said, if we nominate a socialist for president of the United States, obviously referring to Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump is going to say we nominated a socialist. If we nominate anybody else, Donald Trump is going to say we nominated a socialist. Right? And of course he's right. The point here is not to run on socialism, if that is not the choice of the candidate, right? The point is to not be uncomfortable with the word, to not run from it like Michael Dukakis did from liberal. It doesn't work to run away from it. You have to lean in and say, I don't happen to be a socialist myself, but socialists have actually done some pretty good things in this country. Franklin Roosevelt met with socialists after he was elected in 1932 with Norman Thomas and others because he wanted to learn more about something they had campaigned on. A crazy notion in 1932, social security. And that became sort of a part of our history, right? And the fact is, socialists have been a part of our history for a very long time. The Democratic Party is going to have its convention in 2020 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And somebody is going to say, wow, that And maybe somebody smart who knows the history will point out that the reason the Milwaukee lakefront is open and accessible to everyone is because a socialist mayor, Frank Zeidler, said, we're not going to develop the lakefront, we're going to make sure that working people have a chance to go to the beach when they have a couple hours off. It's not to go off the deep end on anything, but it is to explain. Because at the end of the day, avoiding these subjects doesn't get you where you need to be. If you want to have a moral discussion, you had better make your morality more appealing and more attractive than his immorality.
Here we go, next question.
Hi, Joanne Warmick on Medicaid or Medicare for All. I've heard all the arguments, the pity argument, the economic arguments, those all came out in the debate, but the central argument, which is really a selfish argument, is when I walk in here and I get my smoothie, I would like to make sure that that clerk at the, isn't a sick person that had, the sick leave to heal herself or himself and has had the health care. I also would like to make sure that that person maybe had the opportunity to take that $1,000 that Gang was proposing that we all have, so that that person has an opportunity to extend his or her education when needed, etc. So all of these are really selfish arguments.
They can be.
And
that's okay.
But they aren't bringing, the candidates are not bringing those arguments up. If I have my little scorecard, the pity argument, think of that poor person in the wheelchair. You got the other arguments, about economics. It's really a crime for us to have all of this apparatus and all of that, this insurance company apparatus that's sucking it out of us.
Okay,
but we don't have. How can we introduce the selfish argument that I would like everybody to be healthy, so I don't have to live in a little glassed-off world? Thanks.
That's brilliant. That's very, very good. So the next time, you have my email, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. The next time you make your check card of the selfishness argument, I would love to have that, because that's actually the person who can do that is not a bad player. Yeah. That's a good way of arguing. Do you know who was great at the selfishness argument? And it got him elected to the Senate 3 times. Russ Feingold. Russ Feingold, he'd say to him, why are you on the Africa subcommittee? What does Africa have to do with Wisconsin? And Russ Feingold would say, do you know, we've neglected Africa. Africa was harmed by colonialism, and now it's been harmed by economic exploitation. And so Africa has a lot of people who are in kind of dire straits. And if one of those people gets Ebola or something like that, and they get on an airplane and they fly to the United States, that's a problem for us. And he would point that out. He would say, I care about Africa because we live in a world where you can get from one continent to another in half a day. And so we can't not care about it. Now, that was a little bogus, because Russ Feingold actually cared about Africa because he loved the people that lived there and he thought it was a wonderful place. But he made that selfishness argument so that people who didn't care could be brought in. So you're not wrong about that. Let me say one other thing about, as regards one of the complexities of this thing, and this is a really hard one, it's an intersection issue. When we talk about whether immigrants should have health care, right? That's the way you talk about it. You have to say, immigrants prepare our food and take care of our kids and really serve as underpinnings of so much of our society. So many folks new to this country work in the service industries. They become doctors and lawyers and senators, but many arrive and work and so what you want to make sure is that they can be healthy and that their kids can be healthy. And so that's one of the ways to make the argument. The final thing I'll say on that, just one important element. She mentioned Andrew Yang, who is running for president, and he's talking a lot about technological change. I would argue the #1 argument for Medicare for All is that the technological changes, the automation changes that will come in the next 5 to 10 years will put tremendous numbers of younger workers in a situation where they will not have a defined traditional job with traditional benefits. And the reason you want Medicare for All is to make sure that people aren't stuck in a situation because of economic, technological, and automation changes where they don't have health care, or where health care is dramatically unaffordable to them because of deductibles and premiums and such. And so I would really, I think we're working over here, and good work, I know. I would really emphasize that, I was disappointed by this in the debate. When you talk about Medicare for All, you need to talk forward as regards where our economy is going, because when you do, it starts to make tremendous sense. In fact, it starts to make the only sense in that context. Because the fact of the matter is, 2 days after the debate in Detroit, the Warren transmission plant, about 20 miles north of Detroit, a big GM plant, closed. Now everybody who worked at that Warren plant had fabulous traditional benefits, but that plant is gone. And in fact, the interesting thing was that Warren plant closed on Thursday, and the Hamtramck GM plant that it supplied is going to close in January. And the fact is, every time a plant closes, we lose a place where traditional benefits were really locked in. And so we are on a very rapid train. Even if we have jobs, even if we all have 3 jobs, the fact of the matter is that we are less likely to have jobs that provide us with the benefits we need.
Here's the last question back here.
Hi, I'm Nadine Walston, formerly of Brooklyn, now of Madison.
And I love that we are in a place where when you say you're formerly of Brooklyn, that means Brooklyn, Wisconsin.
Yes. right. I'm piggybacking on what you're saying about health care. And one of my very first jobs was to be a public health nurse at the time that Medicare was being debated and voted in and so forth. So the whole question of health care as a right versus a privilege, been there, done that. And I think it's obvious that what we've got isn't working and we've got to go back to the drawing boards. However, the initial implementation of Medicare, as somebody with boots on the ground, was a flaming disaster. And they would pay me $50 a day to go in and give someone their insulin injection twice a day, but not pay me to teach them how to give it to themselves. So my point is that one of the things about the debate that really troubled me deeply is when we talk about Medicare for all, et cetera, do we have a clear understanding of, if we're going to start a public option, a universal health care, that what it means to start this thing from scratch, and why aren't we taking and using the ACA, Obamacare, and expanding on it, number one, and number two, the other thing that we need to be looking at is it was the pre-existing conditions that really made a difference in 2018, and no one was talking about that. And lastly, no one was talking about the fact that these constant mergers in healthcare is driving the costs up, as well as, you know, we've got to get a handle on the costs. And I just think it's really important that these programs need to be, these candidates need to be talking about healthcare. And I'd like to hear your views of where we should be going.
Great question. Thank you for your wonderful work back in 1964 or 65. You're dating yourself a little bit. But here's the bottom line. She is right. The changes that are being proposed are huge. Now, at the end of your question, you actually got to sort of one of the hearts of the matter. Because mergers and acquisitions and the way that our healthcare industry is now run, it is a profiteering operation. And the fact is, Elizabeth Warren did refer to that. She talked a little bit about the profiteering, and a couple other people did. I think Kirsten Gillibrand did as well. This is a big deal. what ought to happen in our debates, and frankly in our discussions about this, is a real constant downloading of some numbers. That our healthcare system costs $3 trillion a year, right? How much of that goes to stockholders? How much of that goes to profiteering? And it's really important to call them out. And unfortunately, an awful lot of our politicians, and frankly a lot of our moderators in debates, don't like to do that. Because it's something Bernie Sanders pointed out in the debate. He said, these insurance companies, they're going to be advertising during these debates. And they did. They had ads on telling you how horrible reforming your health care is. And so, talking about the profiteering is a really, really big deal. But also, I think being realistic is a big deal too. And here's the bottom line. The ACA was a hard implementation. It didn't come easy. Yet now, just, we're really only talking like 8 years later, it's incredibly popular. That's what happens with every healthcare reform and every social reform we ever do. It's why the Republicans fought against it with everything they had. It was because they knew if it was voted in, it would be a hard implementation, but in time it would become very popular. And it is. And so what needs to be said by these candidates, and frankly what needs to be said by Democrats and progressives, is what's being proposed with Medicare for All, or whatever we call it, if we even step down a step and talk about a public option, whatever, what's being proposed is the next step, right? And you don't have to promise that everything about it's going to be easy. What you should promise is that if we do this now in 5 years, you will love it. Because history tells us that we end up loving healthcare reforms. You know what the interesting thing is in this country? People never go back. Massachusetts under Mitt Romney did healthcare reform. They have never gone back. And so, what?
We went back in Obamacare.
Well, a little bit. They tried to undo it, but Obamacare is still on the books. And in fact, they tried with everything they had to take it apart, and it remains on the books. It's not as good as it would be. And this push and pull, which you see even in Britain, Margaret Thatcher would never have gotten rid of the national health care plans, but she would squeeze it and make it more difficult. The key on these things is to understand that the people never reject a plan that's been put in. And so you start to teach that reality, that history. And maybe we bring this woman on, and we have her say, when we started doing Medicaid, it wasn't easy, right? But now everybody loves it. And so the key on this thing is to level with people, be straight with them. You don't have to tell them it's going to be perfect right away, but what you do have to tell them is it's essential for us going forward. And then the other thing, she did something really useful. She mentioned the pre-existing conditions. She mentioned the practicalities of this. And I do believe that all of these candidates, including candidates like Warren and Sanders and de Blasio and others who back Medicare for All, they don't do a good enough job of telling the human story of people who lack health care. Now, I often disagreed with Bill Clinton. I didn't think Bill Clinton was a perfect president. But I will tell you something. Bill Clinton could tell a story. And when Bill Clinton got in front of a crowd, he, anecdote after anecdote after anecdote, and every one of them made you cry a little bit. And at the end of the thing, you thought, well, this guy gets us because he feels our pain. And that is a big deal in politics, and it is missing a little bit. I happen to believe in Medicare for All. I think it's where we have to get to. I'm a passionate advocate for it. But I understand that the way I'm going to get my more conservative brother-in-law, or lots of people I know, the way I'm going to get them there is by explaining what they don't have now that they will get if we make this change. It has to be practical and maybe even a little selfish, but it's doable. I mean, the amazing thing about it is, and I'll close off with this story. In North America, where we live, the first Medicare for All plan was implemented in Saskatchewan in the late 1940s.
Tommy Douglas.
Tommy Douglas. And Tommy Douglas was an itinerant preacher and a socialist. And in 1944, he led the Cooperative Commonwealth Party to power. They won the election, and they won against bad guys, and it was a surprise that they won. And Tommy Douglas announced when he became the premier of Saskatchewan that when he was a young kid, he had developed, I don't know if it was polio, it was a very bad ailment. And his family was impoverished, and they had a doctor who cared for him for free. And he said, I am now the premier of Saskatchewan because I got free medical care. And it is my moral duty to make sure that everyone gets free medical care. That when you need it, you get it. No matter how rich you are, no matter who you know, because that's the only reason I'm alive today. And he preached that gospel in Saskatchewan, a very conservative province. And when they created their Medicare plan, their Medicare for All plan, their health care plan, he personally delivered the cards to the people who got it. He literally went to their house and gave them the card and said, you will never have to worry about paying for health care again. And he went into the poorest neighborhoods and he went out to rural farms and he preached the gospel. And Saskatchewan became the first place in North America to have guaranteed health care for all. And in a period of just 20 years, every other province in Canada adopted it. And the reason Canada has a national health care plan, which is one of the envies of the world today, is because somebody went out in that initial stage and preached the gospel and made it a very human promise. And the fact is, as I started out here today, talking about who you're going to nominate for president, whoever you nominate for president, and that is your choice, make sure that that person can preach the gospel. Make sure that they can go out and make the case in this deeply human and fundamental level for the reforms that we need. First off, we need to get rid of Donald Trump. That's fundamental. But the fact of the matter is we also have to get rid of the pathologies that made Donald Trump possible. And the way you get rid of the pathologies that made Donald Trump possible is that you guarantee that people don't have to wait up at night and have struggle getting to sleep because they don't know if they can pay their health care bills. If you can convince them that you're going to take care of that, you will be the President of the United States. And the next time we gather with the Oregon Progressives, we will be popping champagne corks and celebrating the end of Trump and Trumpism and the beginning of a great era in America. Solidarity, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, John. So appreciate you being here. I think I speak for all of us when I say we always come out of your talks feeling like we can do this.
I'm taking a picture of all of you. Yeah. Because, do you know why? Because I took my wife to the Oregon Progressives victory party after Wisconsin won everything, and she said, oh, there are only 15 people there. You know, and so I want to make sure she knows that we did a great job here. You may put your fists up in the air and all right. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Thank you, John. So I know that the tendency is to leave, but please do not. So we have several people who want to speak from the mic, and I have a reminder from Marilyn that as you leave, not now, but when you leave, please just turn these in at the desk, and we will make sure that we get them to her if she needs to leave before that happens. So we have 5 or 6 folks to speak from the mic, and we have the Union Bell Band to finish us out. So right now, in this order, we have Ro Parker, Gerhard, I can't read your last name, and Hans Noldner. First 3 up to the mic. So Ro, Gerhard, and Hans. 3 minutes, please.
Hi everybody, my name is Ro Parker with Anderson Park Friends. I am here tonight to give you a short update on some fabulous things that are going on in our local park. Just this week, the fruits and labors of about 25 volunteers from the Oregon community harvested over 200, maybe 250 pounds of onions that are drying at Fitchburg Farms. And we hope to have them available to the emergency food pantry in no more than 2 weeks. We have done that with the help of the Oregon Area Progressives, the Oregon Area Food Pantry. Anderson Park Friends is a group of people concerned about conservation and a number of things that relate to all of us. The food pantry garden is just one of those, and we've had 25 volunteers do this, and it's just great to be here. Nancy Murphy is one of our board folks. Barb Hill, I thought, was going to be here. There are a number of people who are members. The other thing is that if you would like to know more about the new, fabulous 40-acre dog park that we have planned for Oregon, Wisconsin, come to our next Anderson Park Friends board meeting. It's going to be the third Wednesday of this particular month. It's going to be at the Town of Oregon Town Hall. We are talking about the plans to make this a reality next year. In addition, if you happen to miss last month's Anderson Park Friends board meeting, you would have missed a discussion about our plans to have a market garden farm, and we are going to energize a planning phase for this. We hope to be able to have 5 to 10 growers in the park growing fresh produce for our farmers markets, our restaurants, and our school district. Here in Oregon, Wisconsin, the ultimate vision is to have over 40 people here locally, improving access for fresh produce for all of you, plus the Oregon area food pantry garden. If you'd like to know more about this, let me know. I'll be in the back. Would love to talk to you about these different exciting things that we have going on. Get involved. Progressives need to do more than sit and talk about politics and good things. We need to be active in the community. Thank you.
Gerhard and then Hans.
Yeah, I have not been here to one of these open mic things to speak at it, so I was kind of misunderstood what was going on here, but that's okay. Yeah, it'll just take me a minute or so. I thought John was going to bring up something about a problem with the U.S. Senate. I'm greatly concerned. The fact that we have a Moscow person in there, head of the Senate. We have a problem with 17 million, I heard the figure today from Tom Hartman, 17 million people who have been knocked off the voter rolls in many of the southern states. And I don't think we're, in Wisconsin here, we're not so bad off yet, but I think we have a real concern about voter rights, period. I think there's a big attempt on the part of a group of politicians in Washington, D.C. that want to get rid of a lot of the voters, particularly voters who vote for down-home issues that most of us are concerned about. So I think it behooves all of us to get on the phones and start calling people like Ron Johnson, and I think our other senator is on the right side of it, but I think we need to start calling other representatives and suggest that it's not just a case of health care problems. We have a case of voter suppression, and related to that, obviously, is all the money that's also flowing in from rich corporations and healthcare companies and so on. I think one of the things that hit home to me was something that Bernie Sanders mentioned about taking a busload of people to Canada to get insulin. They spent $1,000 for insulin. In the United States, it would have been $10,000. I think those are the kind of issues that we really started hitting home about. I think John Nichols is right. We have to start talking to people about these down-home issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Gerhard. Hans and then Marcel.
Thank you. I know that one of the big pitfalls in life for me is to get really self-righteous and certain about things. And then I need a world of bad guys so I can be a good guy. And I don't think I'm the only person that's susceptible to that. And so tonight I would like to challenge everyone in this room to try on looking at some really uncomfortable possibilities. So here's what I challenge you to do. Ask yourself, what have I done? What have people on my side done to divide the citizens of this nation against each other? It's very comfortable to say someone else has done that. It's not comfortable to look in the mirror and ask, what have I done, or how can I be responsible for that? How can I choose to be responsible? Up to the point that, because I know some people, they held their noses and voted for Trump because they were so put off by what they see coming from progressives on the left. They're really put off. These are people who are Democrats for most of their lives. And to just be right about everything, you're not going to get them. So here are some of the rules for this exercise. You don't get to write people off who vote for Trump or support some of the things he said. You don't get to write them off as a bunch of fascists and xenophobes. Maybe some are, probably some are not. You don't get to blame money and say, oh, it's all because of money. You don't get to fall back on, we just need to turn more of the people on our side. And lastly, no more doubling down. We're right about everything. And to back off on that would be to compromise their principles. Thank you.
Thanks, Hans. Marcel, and then Charlotte.
Okay, thanks. I had a question for John, and there he is. But he doesn't have to answer it.
Say about it, Charlie. What's the question?
The question was, what happens next year if the Democrats get to Milwaukee and they don't have a clear-cut candidate?
Fabulous if they don't. That's great. Then we'll have a divided convention and have a great big fight. And Wisconsinites will get to decide. No, the convention's coming to Milwaukee. That's great. Because Wisconsin is the best state in the country, there's no question. And so if the convention's coming here, everything will be better because of it. Now, the fact is Milwaukee lied, they don't have enough hotel rooms, and so they're going to have to put delegations in Madison. There's no doubt about it. So the convention will almost be here. But here's the deal, if it's a divided convention, if they come in all divided up, on the first ballot, people got to vote how they were pledged out of the primaries and caucuses. On the second ballot, the super delegates return, right? And they can then push it one way. Now, you can say, well, I don't really like the super delegates that much, and frankly, I don't. I don't like the idea of it very much. But that creates a pressure on the first ballot for people to form alliances and kind of settle it that way. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think you're going to see people on that first ballot saying, well, let's work together. Let's form this coalition. Now, the final problem of that is how many people are in play. And I will bet you, see if I'm right on this, I bet you we come into that convention with at least 4 significant candidates, which is something we haven't seen in generations. And so then we're going to have people aligning and working with each other. And anybody who tries to tell you how that's going to work out, they're as smart as you are. So that's my answer. And keep listening to this wise man as I say bye to you.
Okay, it should be entertaining. But I have, Gwen brought up a point, and it reminded me of a little thing that, a little incident that happened to me. I was talking with a friend one night, and she's sitting there, and she's going on and on,
about how bad Donald Trump is, and you know, oh, she's going on for literally minutes. And finally she stopped and she looked at me and she said, "You like Donald Trump, don't you?" I said, "Yes, how did you know?" And she said, "Well, you didn't say anything." So I think you brought up the point, or John did. Maybe you have to talk and have a discussion instead of sometimes we get going and just rambling on, and you miss a lot that way. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so next we have Bob. You have 2 minutes, Bob. I'm cutting people shorter. Then Charlie and Gwen. So can you do it in 2 minutes, Bob? Okay.
Yeah, I'm tired of hearing this great economy under Trump. Even Fox News, they said it today. It's malarkey. There's not a great economy under Trump. If you look at the job creation from 2011 to 2015, when the military budget was going down at pulling out of Iraq, we had 2.5 million jobs added a year. Since then, it's averaged 2 million. So it's 25% better under Obama and a military budget going down than under a military budget going up under Trump. And it's also, the unemployment rate dropped at almost twice the rate during that period of time, that 5-year period. Almost 0.83 a year. Now it's 0.5 a year or slightly less since then. So almost double the drop in unemployment rate when the military budget was going down when Barack Obama was pulling out of Iraq.
What about the debt?
And well, the debt has gone crazy. Everybody knows that. Now that one thing last year, because the tax bill went in, it went up a little bit to 2.4 million jobs, but still below that rate. And here it's back at the 2 million rate again so far this year. It's averaged. So other than that temporary blip, giving 83% of the taxes to the rich. Okay, so it's been a big lie. And just one thing, the stock market bounced back because it was uncertain when the 2016 election happened. Then you know whether it was green stocks or oil stocks, right? So it has been stalled since then because of the trade.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob. Charlie, and we'll finish up with Gwen, and then we have the Union Bell Band to close us out.
I promise to make this real short. Sometimes facts matter. I heard recently Donald Trump was blaming all the problems of the inner cities on Democrats. Well, 22 cities out of the top 100 cities have Republican mayors. Every single one of them has a higher crime rate than New York or Los Angeles. Every single one of them. So I thought I'd share this with you. And I believe Donald Trump's attacks on AOC, Elijah Cummings in Baltimore, weren't motivated by race. As soon as he called David Duke white nationalists and Nazi sympathizers vermin.
Thank you, Charlie. All right, Gwen, and then I have a couple things, and the Union Bell Band will close us out.
This is wonderful, Charlie.
And I am the transition from our political concerns, which are vast and we need to get out there, to everyday life. So my friend and I, we were discussing our tomatoes. And so I have a poem that I wrote, I think I actually read it here once before, but we're all of that age where we don't remember anything. So I'm gonna read it again. And I adore cherry tomatoes. So this poem is called Cherry Tomatoes. Cheery tomatoes, tasting of the sun in bright red and orange, lovely in their symmetrical growth patterns. Henry the dog, jumping on the deck, to catch in his mouth, and I too. None makes it to the kitchen. He and I laughing, dancing, and eating the cheery cherry tomatoes like sweet candy. Heavy on the limb, please make more so delicious roast with onions, garlic, eggplant, and carrots, salt and pepper. Oh, yum. And the only reason for summer to never end. Those cheery cherry tomatoes, but never better without a washing. Just a dusting on a shirt tail, always better than the store. Cherry tomatoes, tasting of the sun in bright red and orange. Lovely burst of summer in my mouth.
Thank you, Gwen. So I just have a couple of announcements. Some of you may know that the Oregon Area Progressives and Ron are planning a Fair Maps for Wisconsin Summit in Marshfield, Wisconsin on November 9th. The goal of this is to educate and activate grassroots activists, progressives, Republicans, Democrats, whomever that is concerned about the gerrymandered maps that we have in this state and want to see fair elections. So, if you are interested, please go to the website, fairmaps4wisummit.com, grab one of these business cards from either of the check-ins, and then also we have these, I can't read it. This time, Wisconsin deserves fair maps yard signs for $5 suggested donation. If you can't do that, just take one. We want to get these out and around. So please, that's a very important thing. We're working hard to make sure that this is a summit that's representative of the whole state. So it's really important that we represent the areas of the state up north, as well as Dane County and Milwaukee. We want it to be, the reason why Charlie suggested Marshfield, we're looking for a place in the middle of the state, and Marshfield is just this 2.5 hours from every city and rural area on the perimeter of the state. So look for more information, please register. It's only $50.
Well, wait.
Only $50.
That includes lunch.
That includes lunch and a water bottle that says on it, gerrymandering sucks. And the water bottle will have a straw. Okay, so, and those will also be for sale there so that you can give them to your friends and make sure that people know what it is that you're passionate about. So again, www.fairmaps4wisummit.com. Was that the only thing? Was there something? Oh, September. Our September open mic is going to feature folks from Forward Kenosha. They're going to be here to talk about the Immigration Detention Center in their area and what they've been doing on that. And unfortunately, Rick won't be here to play that lovely song that you guys played just before John started. So that's a segue to the Union Bell Band, Barb, Rick, and Amanda.
Give us a minute to get plugged in.
Look at the state budgets for the governors. They're all they don't believe in government, they don't appreciate it, they don't call Trump It's usual John Nichols made great sense. He's so good.
I just wish he'd
While they're getting set up, I just want to remind folks, if you're from the Oregon area, that does not necessarily mean the village of Oregon, but any place around here, we meet right back here in this room, 10:30 every Saturday morning. You're welcome to join us.
I'd like to also do one more quick plug for putting money in our basket back there. The Oregon Area Progressives do a lot of work besides political work, and this summer we are feeding kids free lunches in a program through the school district. So we could use some extra cash to buy bread, peanut butter, whatever goes in the lunches. So if you're feeling generous, throw some extra money in there. We could use it. Thank you.
Well, this is an optimistic song, and it's a song that's based on one that everybody knows, so you can sing the chorus if you want to. Can you guys hear me out there? All right. The words are fairly pertinent, so... Sorry, I'm thinking about singing and not playing, so we'll start one more time. Hit the road, Jack, don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack, don't you come back no more. Everybody's sick to death of your lies, your orange skin and your too long ties. We've seen enough of your fat little hands, your small man syndrome and foul grandstands. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more. See that chopper on the lawn, just as long as it means you're gone, gone, gone. We won't miss your mantra of fear and hate. It's time to go, and we can't wait. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack, don't you come back no more. Be sure to take the kids and your cabinet dopes. The few that are left have lost all hope. Keep an eye on your money, your deity. Like a breath of fresh air, we'll all feel free. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more. We don't need to see you indicted, just as long as you have lighted off to the dustbin of history. Tweet your farewell and leave us be. Hit the road, Jack, don't you come back no more. Be happy to see you go. Hit the road, Jack, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Take the kids, take that little blonde thing and just go. We don't really need you in this country anymore, so hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more. I thought this crowd might appreciate that one.
What kind of lyrics?
for the occasion. Oh,
This will probably worth a lot of money someday.
It's worth a lot of money right now. Set those up there. All right. Well, we're on 4. I don't know why we got on the Dylan songs tonight, but here's another one. Okay. All right, that's probably our last song, but this is a work in process for us. We're trying to perfect this song.
If you know it.
Yeah, this is Paul Simon wrote this song, and he and Art were in England playing on street corners, poor. And there was a girl named Kathy who would go around with their cap and try to solicit pounds for them, and so he wrote this song. Paul Simon wrote this song about Kathy. I hear the drizzle of the rain, like a memory what I was writing is left undone. I don't know why I spend my time writing songs that I can't believe, with words that tear and strain to rhyme. So you see I've come to doubt all that I once held as true. I stand alone without beliefs. The only truth I know is you. And as I watch the drops of rain weave their weary paths and die, I know that I am like the rain, there but for the grace of you.
Thanks everybody for coming out. Please, 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 if you have someone that you would like to write a postcard to concerning anything that you are concerned about, pick up one of the postcards at either of the tables about the most important office in a democracy is citizen. So, thanks again for coming out. See you in September when Forward Kenosha is our guest to talk about the immigration detention facilities. And that's a wrap.